It's a beautiful June day, afternoon, getting close to the end of June, and I'm going to do some encaustic painting by the pond today. I have this enclosure set up where I do encaustic outdoors, mostly because of the heat of the encaustic and possibly the fumes, although I've got the fumes under control. I'll explain that in a minute. So I'm just setting up here. I'll show you what I've got. I've got two tables set up in this alcove in the shade. One table with my blocks of color, some tissue that I need. Things get dirty, so they have to be brushed off every so often because things are blowing around. With some cold liquid. We got a reference to remember that the hot plate should not exceed 2010 Fahrenheit at any point. If it does do that, then you're seeing smoke, and that smoke is toxic. Now there's my palette set up. I don't clean my palette. I just I'll clean it in a way. I'll show you with spatulas. I'll sort of move the colors into puddles because I'll use them again to give myself more room on the palette. The brushes are always there because they have to be continually wet. That is medium, which will become molten in a minute. That is the thermometer, which tells me what my temperature is. That is cleaner, which is beeswax, not beeswax, parawax, which I have a container of here somewhere. Oh yeah, it's underneath there. It's underneath the tablet. Parawax to clean brushes with, although I very seldom clean brushes. I just clean them off with a tissue. I have a knife. I have a carving tool to make lines onto my painting. This plywood palette, plywood panel, 1/4 inch plywood, good one side. It's actually good both sides. One side is better than the other. And I've already put a layer of beeswax medium onto it, which would be this when it's molten. It's not molten yet. And this is the beeswax here, which gets cut up into little bits and put into there and then made molten either with the heat gun or put on here. One thing I should do right now, oops, I'm not quite melted yet. At the very start, I turn my controls to maximum. I'm not quite ready to go yet. I'm going to turn it down a bit. I have two burners on here. I'm just a little bit past medium. And that's what I'll cook at for the whole time. I don't need to go higher than that. The colors will remain molten. And I want the colors to be molten at all times. Now, before I start, well, I'm going to work from an image here, roughly, that I have on there. I can't see it very well, and I don't particularly care. I'll just use it as a sort of a starting point, an inspiration. But actually in all my things, even when I'm working from images, even when I'm working right in front of a scene, I change things dramatically depending on the needs of the painting. But I use what's there. I use what's there in reality to guide me in a lot of ways. It's just I don't make a slavish copy. I don't even make an accurate copy. Nor do I want to. Okay, you can see the colors are starting to be molten now. You can see the reflection in them. And I tried to make these tables level. I'll just show you here. There's more panels there set up, ready to go. I have one extension cord. There's the way things are set up. And I tried to make the tables as level as possible because if your palette is not level, you know, the colors will sort of flow off and mess with your intentions there. By the way, this palette was made for me by an engineer. The engineer was the husband of a lady who taught a course in encaustic that I took, and he made a bunch of these, and they're great palettes. The aluminum heats up quickly, keeps everything molten. The brushes are kept at the ready there by a little holder, and it's big enough to do the job for what I want. I paint small paintings. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can do this with electric skillets, which is a good way to do it. You know, find them at yard sales. plug them in and away you go. Now I've got one extension cord because I only need two implements. I need the hot plate and I need the heat gun. And I'm plugged into a power pole there. And there's where we're painting at. This beautiful pond, which is man-made, by the way. And it's just a nice feature to have in the summer. If you hear the windmill screeching, there's something rubbing on it, and I'm getting a person to come in and look at it. But these guys are hard to get to your place. There's like one repairman for the whole province, it seems, so it takes a long time for them to get to you. So anyways, he's going to come and fix that. So let's see, is there anything else you need to know? I have a chair here to sit. I paint while I sit and I paint while I stand. I probably paint more while I stand than sitting. Okay, now at this point I'm just going to do a couple of things. I'm going to put things into little puddles here, manageable puddles. It doesn't clean the palette completely, but I don't really care about that. I just want to have mixing area. Well, you get the idea of what I'm doing. I think I'm going to stop this at this point and start painting. My brushes should be molten. See, the brushes are kept on the hot plate too because they have to be constantly holding molten liquid, molten wax, molten beeswax with pigment in it. By the way, maybe I should show you this. This is the great company that makes these. Okay, so that's R&F Encaustics. And I think you can get these at a lot of places now. And they're great. I mean, they're very dense. I've been using these for a while now. Granted, I don't do a great amount of encaustic paintings, but I paint them in the summer, and I've been using these things here for quite a bit now. And I haven't run out. In fact, I haven't even used very much at all. There's a big block of white. And so anybody who wants to do this can easily get these colors. And you can easily find lessons online on how to do it. I do it a particular way because I'm painting small paintings. And, you know, I don't use tubs of molten wax. And I don't make big paintings. So this is all I need. And, oh, the next thing I think I forgot to mention here is this board here that you paint on. There's two things you can paint on. You can paint on a plywood board like this. It has to be absorbent to some degree to hold the liquid wax. And you can see that plywood has a bit of a sort of a tooth, a soft, fuzzy edge to it, surface to it. And that holds the, it's enough tooth to hold the liquid, the wax. Now, I suppose you could use masonite, but not painted. I think actually masonite's a little too hard of a surface. Personally, I wouldn't use it. I'd only use plywood. And the other surface you can use is glue a paper onto this plywood panel and then just trim the edges. And make sure that you've got a good laminating job. That's easy to do. Well, it's actually harder to do than you might think. It takes a little bit of experimentation to make sure that you're getting a good adhesion of the paper to the surface. That's a good way to, that's a good surface to work as well. You know, any acid-free paper, any artist paper glued to a panel like this with the edges trimmed, and then do not prime it with anything. You just go onto it raw, again, because you need that tooth, you need that something for the wax to adhere to. Okay, I'm going to stop this now, and I'll show you a little bit more of what takes place on this later on. Okay, so I've done a bit on the panel. A few things I forgot to mention earlier in the first little video is that once this panel is ready to be worked on, I heat the medium up in this container here, make it molten, and heat this plate up with the heat gun. Just heat it up all over the place, get it nice and hot, brush on the medium with that brush, nice big brush. You only have a couple of seconds to brush anything on, at least this way, because it won't hold its temperature for very long. It won't hold that 200-degree temperature for very long. Atmosphere will cool it down almost instantly. So I brush all of this molten medium onto here, then I heat gun it again and make it adhere, soak into the surface. And that's what you do. I prepare these panels in advance, get ready for painting. And each time I'm ready to paint, I go and heat again with the heat gun and start drawing in, painting in. See, I have my small brushes there where I've done these small things here. And each time you apply a few colors, you have to bond, which basically means you take your heat gun and I'm gonna bond this now. I'm gonna try to watch while I'm doing it so I don't overdo it. I go on heavy first, and then I go to medium. You see it melting? Now you're controlling that melting. Okay, I'm going to stop there. That's bonding. I'm careful that it doesn't flow out down. That's bonding, just making sure that the layers of wax that you apply, I've got to make sure that I'm not melting my computer while I'm doing this too. Okay, that's something to keep in mind up for the future. I should actually try to set that up a little better. So each time you apply a few colors, you bond and then you carry on. I like doing this. I like drawing in. And then I have a tissue just to, sorry, I've only got one hand to do this, tissue to clean things off. And it's just a small tool that helps you get a little bit of scale into what you're doing. This is one thing about encaustic. You're going to melt things together. So it's kind of hard to preserve tiny things. You have to make a concerted effort to do that and watch very carefully. Otherwise your smalls will disappear into the mass of melted bigs. Okay, going forward. Alright, another thing to mention here is that as you're mixing, you're not only using these colors pure, you're mixing color with color, obviously, and you're mixing colors with other mixed colors. That's why I'm not cleaning the palette, because I'm actually mixing with these colors. And I'm mixing with medium. Now you may notice that molten medium, I'm not actually cleaning these brushes. I'm wiping them off on tissue and then sometimes dipping them into molten what's it called? Parawax. Parawax, that's that box underneath. That's real cheap stuff. By the way, this is all beeswax mixture. These are beeswax and a hardener in there, a Demar varnish hardener. Now, you may notice that can get kind of dirty, and that these brushes can get kind of dirty too. So when you're going to a warm color, that can become a problem. So you make sure this is hot, and you clean that off with a tissue as well as you can, and then in there with the parawax. But the other thing that you can do to avoid dirty mixtures is, this is the encaustic medium with the beeswax mixture and Demar varnish hardener in it. You can make these yourself, or you can buy them. They're ready-made. You can buy them in different kinds of quantities. And what you can do is you can simply do this. You rub that on. It's melting as I do that, and then you mix it with your paint. By the way, you do the same thing. You do the same thing with these. You just rub on how much you want, a little bit or a lot, and it melts as you do that, and then off you go and mix. So that's really how I'm mixing colors on this aluminum palette. Now we're checking my temperature. My temperature is still 200, which is where I want it to be. Everything is molten. Nothing is smoking. No, you go down here, you notice that things are moving this way a little bit. This is not quite level. So it is really important to make sure that your palette is level while you're doing this, or things will just flow off your palette. So I could do maybe a better job of leveling that later, raising it up on this side here. Okay, now that's what I've done so far. Now this is still not bonded, so I have to take the heat gun and bond this. I'll just do a little bit of that now. And I may stop that bonding for now and go on to the next step. Oops. Keep all your things fairly organized for this, because you can get into trouble quickly. So I think this painting is finished now, at least that's where I'm going to leave it. The last thing I did on this was I edited out some white here, and I think that's better now. I didn't actually do a whole lot of detail down here. I know what's, I'm very familiar with this landscape, so I know what's in these areas, but I didn't want to describe too much there. Encaustic's not a great medium for describing a lot anyways. It's better for suggesting. So I think I'm going to leave this here, and before I go, here you notice that that has crept into there, so I'm going to raise the legs there. I put something underneath the legs to try and level that out, but that's no worry. That will all be used up and mixed into another color. But you do want your palette to, you want your puddles to stay in one place without traveling too much due to inconsistent levels. When I put this away, so what am I going to do to put this away? All this goes back in the box. I'll put all of this, the paints, into the box and take that with me into the house. The hot plate and the palette will stay here on this table under tarpaulin, ready for the next session, and that way, as well as the heat gun, will stay here, and that way all I have to do the next session is come out with my box of goodies and start again. And I can do this throughout the summer and into the fall. So I'll probably get a whole series of encaustic paintings made about this size, some a little smaller. There are some panels there that are a little smaller, and those are already prepped with encaustic medium, so they're ready to paint on. So I think the last thing I'll do is I'll just unplug this, put everything away. I actually let this cool, so it'll take about an hour to cool before I cover it with a tarp. And you can see it's really not too much muss, not too much fuss for a summer painting kind of environment here for encaustics. And I'll leave that there, and I'll take a few photos, and that'll be it for today.